relieffactor.com, and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
You have to be up in 5 hours, 2 hours, and you haven't slept. Vic ZzzQuil Pure Z's is a drug-free blend of botanicals with an optimal dose of melatonin that helps you fall asleep naturally and wake with no next-day grogginess. ZzzQuil Pure Z's, naturally superior sleep.
7:07. Worried about basement flooding? Time to call Permaseal, 800-421-SCAL. Let's check the roads in the Team Hochberg Traffic Center with Jim Talamonte.
Metro is reporting a delay on the Milwaukee North Line. The train due downtown at 7:51 is running up to 20 minutes late with positive train control issues. Tri-State Tollway northbound 294 at stop and go 95th to past Archer. The crash blocking the left lane. Farther north, traffic is slow from the Reagan Tollway to the Eisenhower. Inbound Kennedy, delays start at Canfield. It's 28 minutes O'Hare to downtown, 16 from Montrose, 8 in the Express. Inbound Eisenhower, the delays kick in at Mannheim. It's 32 minutes, 390 to downtown. Stevenson, 31 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Ryan, 24 minutes from 95th. Northbound Lakeshore Drive is heavy approaching Roosevelt. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast. Here's our meteorologist, Steve Williams.
Sunshine, a bit of haze today. It'll be a warm day. High 78, partly cloudy tonight, low 59. Sunny and warm tomorrow and Thursday. High tomorrow 79. Thursday's high 80. Partly sunny on Friday, the high again 80. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
55 at O'Hare. Next news, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. People want to know about the graduated state income tax initiative that's on the ballot in November. I mean, I don't know how you don't know, but...
Well, they call it the fair tax, so the marketing there, is already done.
Yeah, I don't know how you treat this as something novel. I mean, I guess a constitutional amendment is somewhat novel, but the class envy politics behind it is not. The lack of economic good sense is not. But, it's Groundhog Day in Illinois every day, I understand. Same thing goes for unfunded pension liabilities and the other associated debt that is saddling Illinois and driving people from this state because it doesn't make sense to have your home liquidated to finance somebody else's guaranteed seven-figure pension, for example. A lot of people don't think that's a particularly good deal based on what you can get in other states. For some thoughts on this, some explanations, including as it pertains to a new plan they have out to address Illinois' long-time nation-leading unfunded liabilities number, which, according to Moody's Investor Service recently, is not $260 billion, as is normally bandied about, which is big enough, $420 billion in unfunded liabilities in a state that has a $40 billion annual budget. That's sort of the working definition of bankruptcy, although we passed that a long time ago. Joining us now, Mark Glennon, the founder and executive editor of Wirepoint. Wirepoints.org is the outlet. Mark, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan and Amy.
Morning. I don't know. I guess let's start on the spend side and pensions, public sector pensions in this state. You have a plan to model all 5 state pension systems after a segment of the pensions that university employees in Illinois have actually chosen. What is that plan?
That's right. We have what we think is the most comprehensive and thorough report on pension systems, updating the numbers, laying out a path for how to get to reform. Basic idea is, hey, how about we fix the problems instead of throwing more money at the problems. So the basic plan, first, the predicate is you have to amend the state constitution. That's the only way to get something done unless you want to turn to bankruptcy, which I think everybody agrees is a last resort. And after doing that amendment, then you can pick and choose which plans you want. But we've had some particular ones scored by a reputable actuary, pension actuary, Siegel. And our baseline proposal would cut the unfunded liability, which is where the big problem is, by about $54 billion, or 40%, and another $20 billion off the unfunded health care liability. And that's not talked about often, but it's constitutionally guaranteed right along with pension benefits.
But of course,
it's 40.
Yeah, of course. The problem with this is, as you mentioned, not just amending the Constitution, but even getting interest, because this system, and again, that was voluntarily chosen by some 10 or 20,000 state university employees, defined benefit plan that they manage themselves as opposed to the state managing it. You would think, well, that would make sense. The state has proven itself not a very good manager of their money, so you would think public sector pensioners would want to have some control over their destiny. But I guess the benefits are just so lavish that they hope that they're still around by the time they're ready to retire and enjoy them. And so moving people from a defined benefit program to a defined contribution pension means that on a go-forward basis, their benefits are going to be reduced, and nobody wants to sign up for that, or very few do.
No, yeah, it's an option now, and they do sign up for it in large numbers, and that's really the key. Under this plan, you would cut off the further accretion of further liabilities under this impossible system we have, and take them over to a plan where there's still generous contributions from the state, but it's self-directing, it's portable, and it's comparable to what you get in the private sector, a very generous plan in the private sector. That's really the important thing. We've got to at least cut off the further accrual of pension liabilities, because this gets worse and worse every year.
Well,
we're not even funding them to keep them even.
Right. I mean, of course, I agree with you, but my point is in terms of persuading people to make this choice. I know that some have, but you have to level with them, and the reality is a defined benefit plan means it's guaranteed regardless of what happens in the market. Defined contribution plan means it's not. So there are going to be some peaks and valleys with respect to return on your investment for your pension, unlike there are now for the defined benefit plans. And you got to level with people that it's likely the benefits will not be as lavish as they're currently guaranteed. The question is, do you believe that they will be there for, your 20 or 30 years in retirement? And if you don't, then this is the choice that you can make and still have a very substantial pension to have a nice retirement.
That's right. But that's one of the benefits of the system. It puts, it makes them have some skin in the game, which they don't have now. Right now, nobody cares if you're in the pension system about the health of the state. They think that it's going to be there because of this constitutional guarantee. They're in for a rude awakening if they don't change the system. But it'll be far more reliable if we switch out of this horrible system we're in right now and get over into something that the private sector embraced 30 years ago.
Why isn't it just easier to vote for the graduated state income tax and make the rich pay for it all? That's what J.B. Pritzker says we should do.
So many reasons. For starters, $3.6 billion that it supposedly would raise wouldn't go very far. Even if you put it entirely into pensions, it wouldn't fix that. Of course, it's been promised over and over again. It's like loaves and fishes. It's not going to do a fraction of what's being promised about it. It's not going to, in fact, raise $3.6 billion because so many people will flee. The tax base will be eroded. Raising taxes in the middle of a recession violates Economics 101. You just don't do that. And people are furious already about taxes. It's just raising more money and throwing more money down to into a bottomless pit, and I think people are figuring that out.
Well, if it did pass, what does it mean for people in the middle class?
People in the middle class initially would not be affected much. Maybe they get a tiny reduction in taxes. But this is what people don't understand. When they vote in November, they are not voting on any rates. They're just voting to give the legislature full authority to pick and choose what rates to set for different income groups. Initially, they're going to pick on those that are over $250,000. But since we know that's not enough, we're essentially being asked to trust the legislature on this. And it's not going to work out in the long run, and I think people are starting to figure that out rapidly.
Well, I saw some postings from folks at your outlet, Wirepoint's, last week. It's already not been working out for the better part of a decade. People may want to take judicial notice of the fact that Illinois is the only state over the last 10 years, according to the census, and this is not from the Census Cowboy. This is from the actual U.S. Census. Illinois is the only state in the Midwest that has lost population in the last decade, and it's a significant gap between Illinois and the rest of our Midwestern neighbors.
That's right, and all of our neighbors, by the way, even obviously with cold weather, have been gaining population, and those people leaving take a lot of money with them. Even if the numbers are fairly small of people leaving in the upper income brackets, there's not a whole lot of those people in the state. They are the golden geese. They've been leaving already and taking a lot of tax revenue with them, and it's going to accelerate very fast if this passes.
But do you really think the people of Illinois are going to vote for this fair tax or graduated tax?
Famous last words.
I mean, after all of this and what we're going through right now with COVID-19 and the draconian lockdowns and the restaurants being, pretty much forced to close down because it's cheaper to close down than to keep the lights on for 25, 50 customers.
My sense is that people really are turning against this. We haven't seen any recent polling on it. It's hard to tell at this point, but they're getting fed up, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be defeated.
Mm-hmm. Just develop the history of states that move in the direction of a graduated state income tax from a flat tax. And by the way, many of our Midwestern neighbors, those same Midwestern neighbors that are gaining in population over the last decade, also have a flat tax, and in some cases a lower flat tax in Illinois. And in Indiana, a lower flat tax in Illinois, and also a 1% hard cap on residential property taxes as a percentage of home value. And they still manage to field police forces and fire departments and schools and the like. Isn't that interesting? But the history, most notably Connecticut, I believe that was the last state to go from a flat tax to a graduated state income tax. And of course, once they changed the rates, they just stood there forever and they were never revisited. Or is that not what happened?
No, the rates gradually creep down into those middle class taxpayers that you asked about. And the result is that the rates, even for the middle class, are higher than they would be under this proposal. So that's the trend. And you might end up with a progressive system with still higher rates at the upper end, but the middle class does end up getting taxed at a higher rate.
And what else could be in the offing, particularly if this does not pass, for example? There's been, for the first time in my memory, some relatively serious discussion about taxing pension income in Illinois, one of the few states that does not tax pension income, revisiting at the city as well as the state level the idea of taxing financial transactions at the exchanges. Everything's on the table. You got to tax and sell everything, including the kitchen sink.
Yeah, our view at some point is that this crisis is going to get so bad that even these politicians who resist reform of any kind are going to be forced to address real reform. That's why we put out this pension paper, this Wirepoint's 110-page report that we have. They're going to have to embrace it. That goes for pensions, it goes for ethics reform, taxation, everything. And taxing those other things isn't going to help again. People are fed up with those, and the numbers just aren't there to make it work. And raising taxes isn't the solution.
And does that include the city of Chicago? Because it was just a couple of months ago, at the height of the outbreak, actually, that Lori Lightfoot said city finances were, in a single word, fine.
That was just astonishing that you said that protection was built into her budget to cover these things. She's changed her tune since then. But Chicago is particularly terrifying. Those pensions, the police and fire pensions at about 20% funded. I mean, that's just in horrible shape. She's projected these budget losses going forward, but we really don't know how long this is going to last or what the real numbers is. She didn't release any actual revenue loss numbers to date. So I'd love to see what those have been and try to come up with a real number.
And just to respond to Senate President Don Harmon's proposal, he had petitioned the federal government for $42 billion in bailout funding for the state and for localities. I mean, $42 billion. I mean, what does that do? Keep the lights on for 5 minutes longer? That's chump change. And so, but his proposal, that sounds like a lot of money. I mean, it is a lot of money, but not relative to the debt that we've accumulated at every level in this state. And it seems to me that needs to be pierced too. That these folks are not thinking big enough, even with their asks, much less with the real restructuring that needs to be done.
That's right. And nevertheless, that's the big one. They are waiting to see what the federal government will give them. And they're all counting on something very large. We don't know what it'll be, if anything. I personally think it's being deliberately sabotaged by Pelosi because she's asking for such a massive bailout for the states that she's not going to get. She knows she's not going to get it, trying to cause trouble for the elections. But whatever it turns out to be, it's not going to be enough for Chicago and the state. And we won't start seeing some action until they get a final answer from the federal government.
And Governor Pritzker, in the meantime, scaring everybody. Oh, Illinois State Police, we're going to have to cut back on them. We're going to have to cut back on fire and police officers in smaller communities. And then, you do the follow-up. Well, what communities? And you're like, well, I don't know. We'll have to see. And he won't even say, how much money do you want from President Trump, the Trump administration? He said maybe around $5 billion.
$5 billion is, this is the same thing. This is, what do we do? Moody's, $420 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. There's $1.4 trillion in state debt alone before you get to municipalities nationally. And even Pelosi, her pie in the sky legislation, as Mark, you were just referencing, asked for $1 trillion for the states. I mean, the numbers, people just have no sense of proportion about this in terms of the size of the problem versus what is being proposed from these political hacks.
Exactly. The federal government, the best Illinois and Chicago are going to get is enough to compensate them for loss from the pandemic, some lost revenue and the actual out-of-pocket expenses. But that just gets you back to where you started in January, which was catastrophic already. And these numbers are just so overwhelming. There's no way that people in states that have managed their affairs properly are going to shell out to bail out Illinois and Chicago. Nor should they. It's ridiculous.
He is Mark Glennon. He's the founder and executive editor of Wirepoint, wirepoints.org. Always good content on state and local fiscal and budgetary matters. Mark, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Famous conservative quotes presented by Automated Systems.
The main vice of capitalism is the uneven distribution of prosperity. The main vice of socialism is the even distribution of misery. A Winston Churchill quote that rings quite true.
For FDA-regulated staffing needs, Automated Systems provides top talent, including experienced quality control and assurance engineers, plus validation and compliance experts. Hiring the best is critical to success. ASI resources are all degreed professionals with decades of experience in manufacturing, automation, and FDA compliance. That's why ASI is retained by all of Chicagoland's Fortune 500 life science companies, 2 successful startups. For a staffing evaluation, call Laz at 844-HIRE-ASI or visit hireasi.com. That's 844